I should like
Yeah.
Snuggies instead as a comfort blanket. Instead, I like Lorraine Schwartz, which is a problem. Be both strong and vulnerable. She could be both masculine and feminine. She could be artistic and overly expressive and fashion and fabulous, but she could also be like very grounded in utility. So I think that like the expressiveness in her wardrobe, for me, wardrobe is always the way that I enter a character. I'm a very shy person. So if I look a certain way, then I can escape into that. Like, you know,
Hey besties, it is Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's been a weekend. I got a cease and desist by Stephanie Jones last week, and then over the weekend, Perez Hilton, he reported the same information as me about Tom Brady and Stephanie Jones. So take that for what you will. This entire debacle with Stephanie Jones, Blake Lively, and the Baldoni lawsuit has gotten me in touch with a lot of different people, which has been incredible because when I got the cease and desist from Stephanie Jones, I hadn't talked to a ton of creators involved in this. And I was actually able to connect with Billy Bush, who has Hot Mics with Billy Bush. And he also is currently hosting Extra, which is the show, celebrity show. He'll be ending his 5-year run as the host of that show in July. But Billy has been sharing some amazing information from behind the scenes, and his decades of working as an entertainment reporter for Access Hollywood and then for the Today Show and then Extra has garnered him a lot of connections in Hollywood, obviously. And when we were talking, he had mentioned that a couple weeks ago he did this video or he did a podcast episode, and he spoke about these text messages that Stephanie Jones had placed in her lawsuit. And the text messages were put in her lawsuit, and then she put them in her motion to dismiss incorrectly for whatever reason when against Jen Abel. And she's misrepresenting what these text messages say. And in that video and in our conversation, he mentioned to me that Blake Lively's hijacking of the film was extremely costly to Wayfair, to the tune of the budget going over more than $15 million. So this film, It Ends With Us, was supposed to be made on a budget of $25 million. And it ended up exceeding that and going to 40 million. So almost doubling it. I mean, think of that. 25 million was what it was supposed to be made at. It ends up getting finished at 40 million due to Blake's increased wardrobe costs, the fact that they had to hire a new editor, the fact that they had to hire a new composer. They were forced to hire an A-list producer at Blake's direction per her 17-point agreement. They also hired Maximum Effort for marketing, even though they were going to do the marketing in-house through Sony. And so they ended up having to pay Maximum Effort. The filming schedule was so delayed that instead of some shoots taking 2 or 3 days, it would end up taking 2 weeks. The set was often held up by Blake either calling in sick, being in London with her husband, going to Taylor Swift concerts, you know, whatever. She was not wanting to be at this set. And the run up of all of these additions, along with her hijacking the film and changing everything, ends up costing them $40 million just to make the film. So while the box office performed well, $350 million worldwide, that's the gross. That's not the net. Okay. And then they had to pay for marketing on top of that. And generally speaking, you can estimate a film of that size to have a marketing budget of anywhere from, 50 to 100 million. So we don't really know. This film could have been a $40 million budget, but then ends up costing $100 million total. Now, early on, there was articles being circulated that Blake was funding this and bankrolling this. That was the rumor that was being posted, and some of these insiders that claimed that Blake was able to take over because she was funding the film. But that misleading those misleading headlines could have been Blake's take and what she was telling people. I don't know. But Blake funded none of this. She was not part of any aspect of securing money for this film or bankrolling it. All the money was financed by Wayfair Studios and then co-financed by Sony. So anything over budget was eaten by Sony and Wayfair. So profits were eaten by Blake driving up the costs. So Blake was making everyone on set uncomfortable because of her behavior. And pro lively outlets like Dumas, who is represented by the same talent agency WME as Blake and Ryan Reynolds, at one point reported that Blake paid for her own editor to come in and cut the film. That's what Dumas, that was the outlet that was getting leaks, likely from Lively's team, was trying to make people believe that she's the one that paid for this as sort of a way to say, like, well, we paid for it, so we got what we wanted. That's not why she got what she wanted. It was via threats. So when you look back at all the older headlines, it seems rather obvious that they were trying to cover up that they took over this film. And one of the biggest issues spoken about over and over and over again was that Blake wanted to secure the rights for the sequel. She wanted to direct the next film. She wanted to be the one to create the next film. It starts with us. And she was under the wrong impression that Justin didn't own the rights. She thought there was some sort of clause, or she thought that she could get him to sell to her, or that she could get the rights from Colleen, but he owned the rights outright. And so that battle over who got to direct the sequel is really what threw this entire situation into this lawsuit. It's all about she wants that sequel, and it's never going to happen at this point, right? But her body double, or her Justin's body double, who was hired after Blake forced the agreement, the 17-point agreement, to be signed. And she made them hire a guy named Thomas, who spoke with the Daily Mail yesterday. And to the Daily Mail, he said that the film set was tense and that he was supposed to be there for 5 days. And instead, he had to spend 2 weeks in New Jersey. All of that drives up costs. Days on a set when you're filming can be upwards of $1 million, and time is money. And so, as money was going upwards and she was delaying filming, the budget went out of control. And so Blake doesn't like to hear that her choices resulted in an increased budget, but it's a fact. And her body double, who she forced to be hired, claims that Blake was different on this set than she was when he worked with her on Simple Favor and did promos for her for Simple Favor. This is the guy that was naked, that sat as an ottoman, and she put her legs on him like an ottoman and also had his legs straight up in the air, with only a sock on his man bits. And he said that she was very different. And he likened it to be she was in such a bad place. So maybe it was because of what happened to her. Or maybe it was just that everyone hated her and she was creating such a toxic environment. She had a bad attitude. Could have been that. I don't know. But he seemed sympathetic to her, but also kind of sympathetic to Justin, and said that Justin was really nice. And by the way, he didn't witness anything whatsoever that happened. So I started thinking about this. So she increases the budget by 15 million, right? So it's a $40 million budget. And yesterday, as after this came out, I was over on the team Justin Baldoni Reddit, and someone in there shared a screenshot that they found on a Daily Mail article, and it was a comment, and it says, "My mom is best friends with the makeup artist, the principal makeup artist for the movie. I think her name is Vivian Baker. She just left our house down here in Florida and gave us tons and tons of information. It's delicious." So she claims that Ryan and Blake were arguing in her makeup trailer about the fact that she let them come into her trailer while she was nursing her baby. They were screaming about everything for like 2 hours straight. And after that is when all of a sudden there's an allegation coming out that Justin did something to her when nothing of the sort happened. Nothing. And when they start subpoenaing all the people who worked on the movie, they're going to come out on Justin's behalf. They love him, including actor Brandon Sklenar. He's the one who played her boyfriend in the movie. I honestly think that they thought that they could steamroll Justin Baldoni in order to set a lawsuit. He would then hand over the rights to the second part of the movie because there are two parts to it. This was the first part, and there's a second part also. He bought them both from the author. So I know that there's been allegations about this fight in a trailer for a while now. And, it's not discussed in any of the lawsuits at all. There's no conversations from Wayfair. I tried to get confirmation of this from any of my sources. No one has said a word that this occurred. We know that there was a fight between Justin and Ryan where he screamed at him at the penthouse about allegedly fat shaming her. But beyond that, like I never heard about this until that person sent me this. And I don't know, Vivian Baker is the primary makeup artist. She has a pretty long resume. So I don't know if she would actually tell this to someone. People in Hollywood are so scared to speak out because they can get blacklisted from sets and they can lose opportunities if they speak about what happens on set. And a lot of them that work on sets have NDAs that they sign with the studios or the production companies. So take it with a grain of salt. But Blake's body double did mention that Ryan was on set not only here, but also on the set of A Simple Favor. And if you recall, Richard, the paparazzo that I spoke to, he says that Ryan has a pattern of showing up to Blake's sets due to his need to control and his jealousy. So we don't really know why the 17-point agreement came to be, but we know that the 17-point agreement wasn't just about SH. But could Ryan have fueled it? And is she covering for Ryan because he's a controlling narcissist? I don't know. I do believe that the article with the New York Times was never meant to turn into a lawsuit. It was my belief that she did it assuming that she would put it out and that Justin would sink away and go away into the sunset. And then she and Ryan could force him to sell the rights of the film to them. And then Justin would be out of the Hollywood and then they could take over. Everybody that I've talked to says they cannot believe she's taken it this far because she has no case. And everyone that knows about what happened on the set knows that there is no case. So if they created this lawsuit thinking that he was going to hand over the rights, they're obviously mistaken because he is not going to settle. And there was new movement in his legal team. They've added a new attorney. Her name is Ellen Garofalo. She actually is part of Brian Friedman's law firm. She has been in litigation and in Hollywood doing entertainment, representation, and being a lawyer and high profile lawyer. She has been added to the team. And Ellen Garofalo is apparently a very welcomed addition to Justin's team because it's a female litigator, which is an important part of a team, especially if you have sensitive topics like this suit covers. And the female litigator, if it goes to trial, can do, cross examinations of Blake or any women. But apparently she got involved in the case because she saw the injustice that was happening. Interestingly, she worked for Venable LLP, which was Taylor Swift's team that her Douglas Baldridge, her attorney, works at. But she hasn't been at that firm since 2021. But she has a good relationship with that firm still. And maybe, just maybe, her relationships with Venable helped in some capacity with the subpoena getting dropped and negotiations happening. But Ellen also responded to Blake Lively's letter back when they got sanctions. So when they were threatening Rule 11 sanctions. And so she requested admission into this case last week. And my guess is that she might be responding to these motions for sanctions. Given everything that I kind of fell into this week when it came to Stephanie Jones and seeing just how much her attorneys mischaracterized me and also made comments by me and reporting that I did based on court records and on sourced information from sources, saying that I was like defaming her and mischaracterizing my own lawsuits, all of that. I wanted to go revisit her lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, Melissa Nathan, and Jennifer Abel, Stephanie Jones, that is. And I noticed something in here, and I think it's pretty telling because last week I showed you that article, like Who's Afraid of Stephanie Jones? And, when I was talking to Billy Bush, he said the heart of this case really is, in his opinion, Stephanie Jones making this situation go nuclear and going nuclear by inserting herself into it to create drama, to get back at Baldoni, to get back at Jen Abel, but also something she's accused of doing is creating crises for her clients that only she can fix. And in her lawsuit, she accuses Abel and Nathan of doing just that. And you know how they always say, like, when you talk about narcissistic people, that oftentimes they accuse people of what they are doing themselves? So that was kind of my thought when I was looking through this. She discusses how they're behind the scenes where they were trying to squash emerging media reports about HR complaints that were filed, which I think is interesting because there weren't any HR complaints filed. And I wonder where this came from. Did Leslie Sloan leak this or did Stephanie Jones? Because now my brain is wondering who really did this smear campaign. I know that Leslie Sloan was definitely speaking to outlets and was for sure, representing Lively's side and was not, in my opinion, being very honest. But listen to this. On information and belief, Nathan and Abel also used their industry connections to plant negative articles about Lively in press outlets, including the Daily Mail and the New York Post, page 6, and leveraged their teams to create and perpetuate negative content about Lively on social media platforms such as Reddit and TikTok. For example, Abel closely coordinated with page 6 reporter Sarah Nathan, Melissa Nathan's sister, to publish an article hostile towards Lively's role in the production of the film. Now, in the screenshots that Stephanie Jones would have had access to, she would have known that it was not Abel that was coordinating with Sarah Nathan, but rather uh, Sarah had let Melissa know that she had been given this information, and it was Leslie that planted that story. It says Nathan and Abel enthusiastically supported the strategy that Baldoni and Heath wanted and deliberately hid from Jones in order to ingratiate themselves with Baldoni and Heath and drive a wedge between Baldoni and Jones and ultimately steal Baldoni and Wayfair from Jones Works as clients. So her belief and her lie is that she was kept in the dark, which we've seen isn't true, and that they were doing all of these plantings of stories that were not only negative to Blake, but negative to Baldoni so that they would be reliant on Nathan and Abel. It says Jones, for her part, was kept in the dark about the coordinated strategy and was not aware Wayfair was actively approved and participated in it, objected to Wayfair's hiring of Nathan, advocated a positive press strategy instead. Listen to her thing. Working together, Nathan and Abel's stated goal in all of this was to position themselves to be able to steal Wayfair and Baldoni and other clients from Jones Works to the new firm Abel was planning to form, so that those clients could be then serviced jointly by both Abel and Nathan's new firms instead of Jones Works. And they explicitly discussed bringing Baldoni over. Listen to this. To further their plan, Abel and Nathan contrived to plant stories in media outlets, including the Daily Mail and Business Insider, to trash Jones and Jones Works' reputations publicly and to their clients. Then also back channeled with Wayfair and Baldoni to paint Jones in a negative light. So she believes her lawsuit is alleging that Abel and Nathan made Wayfair and Justin not like Stephanie Jones. For example, following the premiere of the film, the Daily Mail published an article reporting on tensions between Baldoni and Lively. That article relied exclusively on social media posts that had been identified for Abel earlier that same day, either a shocking coincidence or a confirmation that Abel had planted the story. Now, I spoke to someone, and that story was not planted. That story was literally an organic story that a reporter was talking about And the reason why Abel was talking about those texts and those stories is because these were going viral right now in groups and on social media. And it's listen to this. On information and belief, Abel and Nathan conspired to plant the story in the Daily Mail in pursuit of dual objectives. First, the negative story cemented Baldoni's need for Nathan's crisis management services, ensuring herself an ongoing paycheck. Second, they arranged for Baldoni and Wayfair to believe that Jones was the cited insider and also created a false story that Jones had publicly blamed Lively for the article, thus sowing discord between Baldoni and Wayfair on the one hand and Jones on the other. She is literally accusing them of creating and planting stories against their clients. So their clients need them and that only they can fix them. And then also turning Baldoni and Wayfair against her. The basis of this lawsuit is so ridiculous, in my opinion, because if you read the Business Insider article, they talked to 40 people. 40 people. 40. How is it that 40 people who were interviewed for that piece are only Melissa Nathan and Jen Abel? And apparently, Abel only found out about that from Stephanie Jones. And it's in that article, that very article, that multiple people that worked for Jones, former clients even too, on record said that Stephanie planted negative stories about her own clients so that she could fix it for them. And she worked hand in glove with media outlets where she would allegedly plant a negative story and then get a positive opportunity later. And then when the bad press came out, she would be the one to rush in and fix it for them, securing an ongoing paycheck. She claims that it's that article that got Josh to contact Abel about being responsible for the story. But then she includes this email and it says it's from Jamie Heath. Jamie wrote this. I am hearing from Sony that, quote, someone named Stephanie Jones has responded out to the Daily Mail saying that Blake is to blame, and now this has escalated at all. We are purposely not responding to anything as to not fuel. This has fueled it. Everyone stand down unless I am aware of any moves. I don't care who is supposed to do what. I'm interested only in any strategy being run by me. I need to understand that. So someone at Sony notified Jamie that Stephanie spoke to the Daily Mails and, quote, Blake was to blame for everything. And that was on August 8th. Stephanie's claiming they planted that story, but yet Sony told Jamie that. Stephanie responded and says, I don't believe Danny or Kim at Sony are saying that above. Quote also has spaces as if it was just being drafted. She's like talking about the quote that he put in his text message. And then she responded again, I have not contacted press, but it is concerning if Danny and Kim are saying I have escalated this as I haven't even touched this. I'm going to contact them. And then Jamie tells her, don't contact them. And he says this will be a major problem if you do. In this same series of text messages she shares in this lawsuit, she shares something that she sent to Tara, and it's Tara Hanks to Jennifer Abel. And it's text from Stephanie about HR article and us hiring Melissa for crisis. This wasn't planted by Leslie. This is playbook by Melissa. There was no New York Post story that she kept at bay. Melissa's sister works at Page 6. We need to flood zones with positive press and push back on claims. There's no counter to the claims in the story. His complimentary sound bites of Blake need to be covered on high SEO sites. She tries to tell Tara Hanks that Leslie didn't plant the story about the HR articles and that it was planted by Melissa. Now I wonder if the HR article was planted by Stephanie Jones. You know what I mean? And there was absolutely a New York Post story that was kept at bay. There's text messages proving that Melissa was trying to work with her sister, Sarah, who had gotten this information apparently from Leslie or someone. And Melissa sent the text messages directly from between her and her sister to Jen, which shows that it's from Leslie. But she's trying to create doubt in this team that Melissa is doing all of this. But really, was she the one driving so much of this behind the scenes so that Justin and the team would need her and only she could fix it by flooding the zone with positive stories? When I started looking at her arguments for what her belief was happening, I was like, Stephanie, were you doing this? Were you trying to divert attention away from Leslie so that you could get against Nathan, so that they would fire Nathan so that you could be hired? Because she starts telling them on the 14th, I can offer you crisis management. I can do this. She emails them on the 14th and says, I can do crisis management for you. You don't need Melissa. So she was the one that was trying to pit them against Melissa. And mind you, you know what I was told? Can I just tell you something? Melissa worked for them for 1 month. She was not and is not Wayfair's crisis PR today. Wayfair doesn't have crisis PR. Melissa Nathan came in on a limited basis. She was only hired for 1 month, and then she ended her job in September. There was no ongoing coordinated smear campaign. Melissa was done in early September. So if Melissa was out in early September, why was Stephanie still running to Blake telling her that the smear campaign was ongoing? Why was Stephanie running to Blake to tell her that they coordinated a smear campaign against her? Well, I don't know, maybe because she could then get Wayfair to be dependent upon her. Oh gosh, you guys, I figured something out. This is going on with Blake Lively. I can fix this for you. I promise. Stephanie made this nuclear in a way that I don't think most of us even understand at this point. That's my opinion. And these tactics they're using to divert away from what actually did occur through these press leaks about the various people on the set and Blake being, tense on the set. Well, I would be tense on a set too with Blake Lively if my budget went up $15 million. I think the crew would be tense on set if they were being a 5-day shoot to finish the film ended up extending 2 weeks. The mood on a set is highly dependent upon everything going on time. And Blake made it short that it would be delayed. And then she drove up costs. And then she believed she could steal the movie because she believed that Colleen somehow was going to get her rights back. And then this lawsuit was going to force Justin's hand so that she could get the rights back. And this was all some sort of convoluted story for her to gain control on this film, but was the root cause of these claims because her husband was mad about breastfeeding? I mean, this story gets crazier every day. I would love to know what your thoughts are. And what are your thoughts about their new litigator? Tell me in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.